Hello, boils and ghouls. Do you remember Tales from the Crypt? It was a horror story anthology series that came out in the late 80s and told terrifying tales of temptation, corruption, and the fates of those who fall to their innermost desires. Each episode is about a different person, but where most shows want you to root for the main character, Tales from the Crypt shows us people who are complex, but clearly evil. Each story is a lesson in karmic retribution. We watch as characters fall to their own temptations, but the stories don't end there, as we get to see how the characters' actions lead to their ultimate downfalls. And that got me thinking, who suffers the worst fate in Tales from the Crypt? Because you see, while I don't think anyone has a happy ending in the show, there are some people who get it way worse than others. So what I want to do is talk about the events of each episode that lead to the inevitable downfalls of the characters, giving them an ultimate sinner score and assigning them to their favorite of the 7 deadly sins. Then we'll talk about their fates and compare them with the other characters to see if they've received proper justice or an ending worse than they could have possibly deserved. And before we talk about any other character, we have to talk about the Crypt Keeper.
Now that's entertainment.
Without a doubt, the thing that this show is remembered for most is its pun-filled, wisecracking horror host, the Crypt Keeper. In season 1, he's not quite the personality, or even the puppet that he becomes in the not-too-distant seasons. But he is great, and among his many, many puns, we get glimpses into the future Crypt Keeper that we all know and love. We can hear his laugh developing a bit, and he gets a little bit more into the sets and setups as the season progresses. We'll talk about him plenty throughout these videos since, as the storyteller, he gives us hints and insights into each story, and he also usually ends up mocking the characters once their fate has been realized at the end. These videos do take a lot of work to make, so if you enjoyed them, please leave a like and consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on future uploads. And with that said, let's dive into the series and find out who suffers the worst fate in Tales from the Crypt, Season 1. As the series opens, we meet the Crypt Keeper for the first time.
So hang on to your hats, kiddies. This one's a real shocker.
It's one of the shorter interactions that we'll get with him. Really, he just says that we're all maggots, and then he gives us the little shocker pun, so we have a clue for what's coming up in the story. This episode is called The Man Who Was Death, and stars a prison executioner named Niles Talbot. Now, this guy must just have a face that says prison because he's Bill Sadler, who you might know from his role as Haywood in The Shawshank Redemption. You know, the most famous prison movie of all time. So, something about this setting, it's just a perfect fit for him. Talbot is the main character, but he also acts as the narrator for the story, and we get some really great rants from him all throughout the episode. These rants act as his inner monologue to give us a clue as to what he's thinking and how his thoughts might start to get a little bit out of hand. With the intro of this episode, we see a man who was convicted for murder and has been sentenced to death.
This here is Charlie Ledbetter, sitting in his cell out the state penitentiary. It's long about midnight. Charlie's gonna die in a few minutes.
This whole scene, it's really bizarre. But I think its strangeness is purposeful, and it gives us a small glimpse into how Talbot might see his role in the prison. The music, it sounds like a weird carnival, and we hear Talbot monologue about how much he's grown as an electrician, and how much he's learned to love electricity due to his job as an executioner. But the bizarreness really comes from the fact that the scene that we're watching has a man begging for his life and trying to fight as hard as he can to stop his impending death. It's weirdly whimsical sounding for how desperate the situation is. But like I said, I think it's just how Talbot has started to see his job. He revels in the death caused by electricity, and the way he talks about it, it's clearly more than just a job to him. He loves being an executioner.
No!
The scene where he introduces himself is pretty funny. It just looks like an old commercial with the way that it's framed and his monologuing.
I'm a country boy, but I like the city.
After work, Talbot heads to a bar where we see a newscast and learn that a bill is currently being reviewed that might get rid of the death penalty.
Many also claim that execution is still murder in the eyes of God.
Terribly sorry, Niles.
Hey, listen, it wasn't your fault.
And the next we see, the bill has been passed, the death penalty is no more, and the prison no longer needs its executioner.
They canned me for my job because they're afraid of me. They're afraid of death. They don't see it's all around them. It's a disease.
From here on out, every rant that Talbot goes on is so rad. I love his southern drawl, but the way he begins to spiral with each of his speeches is so fluid, and it perfectly takes us through his thought process that lead into an inevitable decision. My favorite part is when he's looking at some junkies on the street. He starts to talk about how disgusting they are, and he mentions how they'd do anything for a little bit of death injected right into their veins. And then he begins to relate to them, saying how electricity is like that for him. It's beautiful and it's clean, and he'd do anything to... But then he cuts himself off.
Because at the same time, junkies are shit. Two-bit criminals.
It's so great. He catches himself slipping, he accidentally shows his growing need just to double back and realize what he's saying. It's great acting and great writing. Next we see Talbot has gone to seek some familiarity, and we see him observing a court case for a man named Jimmy Flood, who is clearly guilty of murder. However, the case gets dismissed because the arrest warrant was improperly filled out. The man walks free, and Talbot is not too pleased with this result.
Jimmy Flood? Now, he went way out of line. And he ought to pay.
Talbot decides it's time to take justice into his own hands. After all, he's been doing it for 12 years for the state, so he knows the law. He understands the death penalty, and he knows that certain crimes can only be redeemed with a few thousand volts of electricity. Also, this is a death scene, but the music, it's so sick. It's such a great beat to die to. Talbot gets away with this because he uses his training as an electrician to make it look like the gate just short-circuited. And now he's got a taste for the vigilante lifestyle, and he's found another target, with a man and his mistress who got away with killing the man's wife. Now, I've got to say, I was really shocked when this scene popped on and this lady was just full-blown naked. Like, I'm a no stranger to nudity in movies and shows, but I've been watching nothing but Nickelodeon shows for the past 8 months. And I'll tell you, this is not the kind of thing you'd see in Are You Afraid of the Dark? But it's fine. It happens in the show. And I wasn't the only one who got shocked, because Talbot crashes the couple's hot tub party with his preferred method of justice.
I find you both guilty of the murder of your former wife, Mr. Carney.
Were you a friend of hers? Who are you?
And I sentence you to death. That sentence to be carried out immediately.
Wait a minute! Wait!
His next rant is about how much good he's doing now and how he's always known his true calling. The way he talks, it's clear that a little bit of time has passed and he's racked up a few more kills, but we don't know how many, as it never fills us in on this gap of time. But now he's got a dancer rigged up with some electricity, and he's ready to once again execute justice. Only, when he flips the switch, nothing happens. Then a detective and some policemen burst through the door and take him away. Talbot has been caught, and now it's time to pay for his crimes. But we've got a little bit of good news.
I got some good news for you, Mr. Talbot. Since you're such a staunch supporter of capital punishment, you'll be glad to know the state legislature has just reinstated the death penalty. And guess who's not pulling the switch this time?
Mr. Governor Collier, listen, you just delay this thing just a couple of minutes.
Just like Talbot always knew, justice includes the death penalty. Unfortunately, this time he'll be the one in the chair. The scene mirrors the intro. We get that funky carnival music, we see Talbot screaming and begging and fighting not to die, but in the end he's strapped to the chair, and his beautiful electricity puts an end to him once and for all.
Sanitas semper in
Real quick, let's hear from the Crypt Keeper.
It just goes to show you what happens when you get too caught up in your work.
Ah, you little weirdo. Man, this is such a great start to a series. It really is a fun episode, and it showcases how well the characters in the series are written. With Talbot, I love how we can see his slow descent into becoming a killer. But I also love that we get glimpses of that personality already in him at the very beginning of the episode. Like, it's clear from the moment we meet him that he loves what he does, and the reasons for his love aren't just because he's doing what he sees as justice. Then, with each rant and each progressing scene, we start to see layers of his person being peeled away until his true self takes over entirely. Through his story, we see him take multiple lives, and with that final dancer, the way he talks made me believe that his line for seeking justice was starting to blur. It seemed like his way of coping with his murder with electricity addiction, but it was also clear that he didn't believe what he was doing was wrong because he had been trained. He'd been doing it for 12 years and he had become the death penalty itself. For a Sinner score, I'm gonna say he's a 7 out of 10. Now, just to establish things, I know murder is bad. Like it's really bad. In real life, it's a 10 out of 10 on the badness scale. But in this show, there are things worse than death. And there are deaths worse than these deaths. You see, we are going to be seeing a lot of evil people in this series, so with some of these sin scores, we've got to fit a little bit of leniency in there. As for his deadly sin, Talbot is a classic example of pride. With every rant he gives us, he never doubts himself. He's perfectly sure that what he's doing is the right thing, and that thought infests him until he sees himself as something bigger and more understanding of justice than any legal system or any other individual. And for his pride, he shared the same fate as his victims, and was put to death by the electricity that so enamored him in the first place. It's ironic, and in a way, it's justice. But to me, I think Talbot got off easy. His sentencing was quick, and his death was fast and professionally done. You know, he wasn't beaten to death in a back alley. He was zapped a bunch, and then it was over. So, we'll say that in the 9 circles of hell, Talbot's only suffering in Layer 3, where he'll have access to a socket with unlimited electricity, but devices that all use the wrong plugs. I'm making up their tortures to triumph at the crimes. You know, I'm quite devious, you see. If you're wondering how I'd rank this episode, I'm gonna go with a solid 8 out of 10. It was really fun to watch, and the pacing was perfect, and Talbot was written and acted incredibly well. It's a great episode and a strong start to this new series. With episode 2, I'm sad to announce that the Crypt Keeper has already been replaced by a jolly man in a big red suit. Although his cheeks ain't looking so rosy anymore. I'm just kidding. This isn't Santa.
Hello, kiddies. Just your old pal, the Crypt Keeper, having a little holiday fun.
It's the second episode, and we've already got a little holiday special. And one of the most memorable episodes of the series. This one is called All Through the House. And if the crypt clause didn't clue you in, well, we find out it surely is a Merry Christmas, and the time for giving and receiving gifts is well at hand. Whereas with episode 1, we saw Talbot's slow descent into irrationality, with this one, we follow a woman named Elizabeth, and instead of seeing the buildup, we see her boiling point as she picks up a fire poker and stands over her husband.
Well, let me have it.
What did you say?
What are you, deaf? I said let me have it.
Merry Christmas, you son of a b****.
We open with a murder and see that Elizabeth is elated and relieved to see her husband dead. We'll find out more on that later. This episode has such a strange amount of levity. Not strange in a bad way. In fact, I found it really charming. Mostly it's just little things, like the sound effect of the fire poker coming out of the husband's head being this cartoonish pop sound, and how the body kind of fights against her as she's trying to pry the poker free. There's more that I'll point out later as well, but for now, all this ruckus has woken up Elizabeth's daughter Carrie. She's all excited about Santa coming to town, so she's barely sleeping anyway. Elizabeth puts her back to bed and cracks her window to let in a bit of that December breeze. And with that situation taken care of, she gets back to her dead hubby. The first thing she does is make a phone call, and we hear her talking to her lover about how she's done what they planned. She's also holding her husband's will, which says that she'll get all of his money upon his death.
It's done. I did it. It's all ours. The money, everything. We're free. Merry Christmas, darling.
Now, to dispose of the body. She begins to drag it towards her backyard well, but she finds out the hard way that the husband isn't quite dead yet. The music here is so rad, the rapid piano with the big old bongs, like, it's so fun. In this little struggle, Elizabeth tries to reach for an axe, but eventually the husband's body gives out, and he just dies mid-strangle. I like a lot of things in this episode. I've mentioned the music and the bits of humor, but my favorite thing is, without a doubt, the camera work. It's masterfully done. If you want an example on how to make incredibly complex shots look simple, then study this episode. There are a lot of beautiful long shots where we see things happen in the background while the camera pans and zooms. Like here, we saw Elizabeth going for the axe, and then in an unbroken scene, we see the axe in frame. Then Elizabeth falls away, and when we pull back, the axe is gone. It's something you could miss on the first watch because it's pretty subtle, and like I said, it's just really well done. I'll try to show off more of these types of shots, but copyright is pretty picky with what I can and can't show, so my examples might be a little bit limited, but trust me, you should watch this episode and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Whoever directed this episode, well, they're going places. They sure are. Or did. This episode was directed by freaking Robert Zemeckis. You know, the guy behind Back to the Future, the full trilogy, and I mean so much more. So, yeah, masterfully done by a master in the craft, and oh boy, we're only on episode 2. So, what happened to the axe? Well, as Elizabeth is dragging her husband outside, we hear this warning from a news anchor.
Police and sheriff's departments in the Gaines County area have issued an all-points bulletin this evening for a male Caucasian reported to have brutally murdered 4 women in the Pleasantville area. County authorities say that the man, a patient at the Pleasantville Institute for the Criminally Insane, escaped earlier this evening and should be considered extremely dangerous. Officials confirm that the suspect is a heavyset man in his late 40s and is reported to be wearing a Santa Claus suit stolen from the home of one of his victims. All citizens in the Pleasantville-Gaines area are advised to remain in their homes until further notice throughout this emergency alert situation.
As she's trying to get the body into the well, she's suddenly grabbed by an axe-wielding Santa Claus, and this dude is so scary. It's also fitting that he's an escaped patient from a mental asylum, because this actor has already played a role like this before, in a movie that I've actually covered on the channel. He's Dr. Giggles, now all santed up and in desperate need of some dental work. He grabs Elizabeth and nearly forces her into the well, but she grabs a sharp icicle and gives the Santa some Joker scars before kicking him and running inside. She struggles to get the door closed as Santa tries to reach inside, but with a chop of the axe she cuts into Santa's arm and is able to get the door locked. And I love how she calls 911 right here. She starts to plead for help before looking out the window and realizing that if the cops came, she'd be caught for the murder of her husband. So now she's in a tricky situation. The cops can help, but at the price of her freedom. It's such a fun conundrum. And here's another one of those shots, by the way. As she's trying to think on what to do, we see Santa in the background window. She doesn't see him, and it doesn't call a lot of attention to it. It's just another great little shot. Also, the 911 operator hangs up on Elizabeth after she doesn't answer her. I know for a fact that that's improper protocol. If an operator got a call from a woman pleading for help that suddenly went silent, yeah, they're staying on the line to track that call because in their mind, the lady's dead now. As she's thinking on how to handle the situation, a tire swing crashes through the window and Santa attacks again. He tries to strangle her, but Elizabeth is able to smash the axe backwards and she bonks Santa back. She locks the window back up and sees him lying motionless in the snow. And then the phone rings. Earlier, we heard the broadcast about that insane guy. She was outside near the well, so she didn't hear any of the warnings. In her mind, a crazy Santa just popped out of nowhere and started attacking her. But with this call, she hears from the local police department and is filled in on the situation. She's also told that the cops will be coming to every house in the neighborhood for a wellness check just to make sure the crazy guy isn't hiding out somewhere. And the cops will be there in 20 minutes. It's so great how we can watch her thinking on what to do in this scene. And then everything clicks into place and she's got a plan. There's a crazy murderer in the front yard and there's a crazy murder in the back. The only issue is the crazy guy only kills with an axe, so the fire poker doesn't fit the MO. But that's easy enough to handle. Elizabeth heads outside with the axe in hand and puts the blade right between her husband's eyes. Then she heads inside, puts on her best "I'm being killed, so please help me" voice, and calls 911 pleading and saying she's found the crazy Santa and that he already killed her husband. But as she looks to check on the husband, the body is moved. There's so much dread in her expression here as she realizes that Santa isn't dead and she isn't safe yet. The 911 operator asks if she's got a weapon in the house, and Elizabeth remembers her husband's gun. She runs to a closet, but oh boy, the fates have it out for her. When she tries to leave, the closet door is locked and then the handle falls off. And even worse, she can see from a window that Santa is on the hunt again. He's found a ladder and he's noticed the daughter's open window. Elizabeth's begging and screaming is so desperate here. There's real fear and emotion that radiates from this scene, especially as we see that Carrie has woken up and is now super excited to see Santa just outside her window. It's also really funny how she reaches for him as if she could possibly help pull him inside. She just get yeeted out the window so fast it would be hilarious. But we don't see that happen. Elizabeth bashes against the closet door over and over until it finally breaks open. She runs to her daughter's room, but when she gets there, Carrie is gone. She hears her daughter's voice from the landing downstairs, but any relief she had for seeing her daughter alive vanishes the instant she sees Santa step into view.
Naughty or nice?
And with that, the episode fades to a finish. But of course, we gotta hear from our favorite little guy before it's all the way over.
Well, it just goes to show ya. Be very careful what you ask for Christmas. You might just get it.
This episode is, it's insanely good. The music, the acting, the camera work, the villain, it's all so great and intense and scary. I actually think it's one of the best episodes of television that I've ever seen. Like, I know that's a huge amount of praise, but it's really so good. There's nothing about this episode that I don't like. It's easily a 10 out of 10. So, with Elizabeth being the main character, let's figure out her sin score. There's a lot less for us to think about in this one compared to what we had with Talbot. Like, we don't know what Elizabeth's rationale for the situation was, but we do know that her husband was at least mostly innocent in the situation. Like, he wasn't actively trying to kill her, so there's no chance for us to believe any kind of, self-defense. And any sympathy that we had for her goes away once she calls her lover and brags about the killing and the money that they'll be receiving. This wasn't a crime that came from desperation or fear, it was evil through and through. I'd say she's a little less evil than Talbot. Like, he killed more people, although most of his victims were guilty of some kind of crime. But still, she only killed her husband, so let's call that a 5 out of 10 on the sin score. As for her deadly sin, this one is a crystal clear case of gory, gold-grubbing greed. It's all about the money for her and her lover. And for her greed, oh boy did she suffer. The Crypt Keeper clues us in that Elizabeth definitely died at the end. The fate of the daughter is unclear, but it's also hinted that she was not killed because the crazy guy only killed adults. But in this episode, we watch Elizabeth basically get tortured with fear. She's hunted for hours by a maniac. She can't call for help, at least initially, so there's no haven coming for her. And as things progress, they only get worse. I think the worst part of it all was the fear that she had about her daughter. That kind of thing, watching your child come into danger right before your eyes and being helpless to stop it, is to me, a fate that rivals and might even be worse than death. And then, in the end, she still did die. She made it out far worse than Talbot did, maybe even far worse than she deserved. So while she did only have a sitter score of 5, I think she's suffering a terrible fate. I'm gonna say she landed near the bottom, in the 7th circle of hell, where she'll be forced to listen to a slightly offbeat version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town on repeat for the rest of eternity. Mwahaha. I'm so evil. This actually would be torturous. This fate really does suck. The next episode we've got has to be a good one, because it's got cat in the title. And the title itself is a fun play on some 50s jazz lingo, a very timely reference for the 1989 crowd. Anyway, it's called Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. Also, just a quick side fact, I guess this episode aired in some parts of the United States as the pilot of the series, but not everywhere. I have no idea why, but on the DVD, this episode is number 3, so I'm just gonna go off of that. So, what is this episode about?
This is the story of Ulrich the Undying, a sideshow performer who found death not only fun, but profitable.
Thanks, Crypt Keeper. So the episode opens in a carnival. So both potential pilots of the series open with insane carnival music, but this one actually does fit the setting. One of the most standout things about this episode is the editing style they chose for transitions and camera cuts. It's got some really fun and classic-looking comic book-style transitions, and there are jarring and constant cuts during chaotic scenes that make things start to feel almost dreamlike as those chaotic scenes escalate. As I was watching, the thing that kept coming to mind was just how fun this episode was to watch. It was a constant thought that I had, and I think it was due a lot to how it was cut together and edited. Like, it's just plain fun. So we open in that carnival, and we get a taste of some of those camera cuts that I mentioned as we hear from the head carny named Barker, as he announces a show by Ulrich the Undying. Ulrich plays the crowd up as he steps into a coffin and is buried alive. Barker announces they'll leave him in there to suffocate for the next 12 hours, and then we see Ulrich, and he addresses us.
When they dig me up, I'll be dead. Just like all those bastards want me to be. But I won't stay that way.
And with that, he begins to tell us how he got into this situation. Not too long ago, Ulrich was a homeless drunkard. But one night, a strange doctor approached him and asked if he would be willing to undergo an experimental procedure in exchange for a lot of cash. The doctor is working with cats, so we know he's gotta be a good guy. And he tells Ulrich about how he's been testing the theory that cats have 9 lives, and to do so, he's been killing cats. So I was immediately wrong. He's not a good guy. But he has scientifically proven that cats can come back to life from death 9 times, and he believes that he's discovered the gland responsible for this ability. What he wants to do is take the gland from a cat and insert it into Ulrich's brain to transfer those extra lives into him. And that's exactly what happens. Ulrich goes under the knife and he wakes up with a brand new gland in his brain. And to test the theory of the extra lives, the doctor pulls out a freaking Luger and shoots Ulrich in the temple. Of course he dies, but a few minutes later he gasps and comes back to life.
Welcome back to life, my friend.
The experiment was a complete success, and now Ulrich can come back to life 9 times. Well, 8, since he was shot in the head. And the doctor has another idea, which I think is somehow even crazier than the cat gland theory, because he wants to use these extra lives that he's given to make a lot of money. And to do so, he decides it's best to turn Ulrich into a carnival attraction. Because, carnivals are known for really making the big bucks. This is where they're introduced to Barker, who sets them up with a show for them to kill Ulrich, but they also mention that it will be a limited amount of shows since Ulrich only has 8 lives to use. The first showing, they put Ulrich in a glass tube and decide it's time for some death by drowning. And I loved how awkward he was here. We've seen him at his peak in the intro, so it's really fun to see him in the infancy of his fame here. He doesn't know how to play up the crowd, and he's clearly anxious about the situation. He also meets a beautiful blonde who asks him to dinner after his drowning. Her name is Curly, and we'll see more of her later. But now, drown the man.
That's it. He's deader than a possum on the interstate. He's dead ain't shit. Don't worry, folks. We're gonna still keep him in there for a full hour. May I have the official clock?
He's dead.
Ulrich is officially dead. But when it's time for him to come back to life, nothing happens. Barker and the crowd start to get really freaked out because they just watched a dude die, so they all start getting out of there. But then at the last minute, Ulrich finally rises from the dead.
Hey! I'm resurrected! Resurrection! Resurrection! He's alive! Resurrection! Gather round! Gather round!
The show was a hit, and Ulrich and the doctor split their earnings, and they hunger for more. The next show is a little bit bigger, a little bit fancier, and a little bit more profitable. Also, Ulrich and Curly hit it off really well, and they're dating now. What a cute carny couple. Death number 2 is Western themed, and the sold out crowd watches as Ulrich hangs himself. I'm also really sorry if there's blurred out scenes with Ulrich dying. It's funny and it's fake, but I mean, it's still a dude dying, so I might not be able to show it off like I want to. After Ulrich comes back to life, it's so funny because his voice is all messed up now since he's just been hanging for a few hours.
There's an awful lot of money at dying, is there?
As long as I get my percentage.
Hey, Doc, no problem. I mean, after all, you're the guy counting the money, right? Me? Well, I was my share. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Doc, thanks a million. Thanks a million.
Jewelry!
I want to see Mr. Friendly.
Man, the instant trailer shaking is so cartoonish. I love it so much. And Ulrich is loving all the money that he's got now, but he still wants more. So one day, he takes the doctor on a little drive, and in the middle of the trip, he just drops this on the dock.
You're about to die in a terrible car accident.
This whole scene is so evil because Ulrich just starts bragging about the doctor's death while accelerating, and the doctor is completely helpless. Ulrich knows that he'll die too, but he's still got 6 lives left. So we just start to see the hope drain from the doctor as he realizes the situation. And then we cut to the next show after the terrible car accident.
I'd like to dedicate this death to the memory of Dr. Emil Manfred, my dear friend, who would have wanted me to continue.
Shut up and cook 'em.
With Ulrich no longer splitting the profits, he makes a killing with his show on dying to electricity. His death here was also really strange. It starts off kind of comical, but then it goes on longer than is comfortable, and by the end of the scene, it's weirdly brutal, with blood streaming from Ulrich's eyes as he's shaking. The next showing is Death by Arrow. At this point, Ulrich definitely knows how to play up the crowd really well, and he's able to get the audience members to pay $1,000 per arrow to try and kill him. Everyone is having a blast while trying to kill a guy, and eventually an archery expert takes the deadly shot.
Sweet dreams, Ulrich!
He's dead!
Things are going well for Ulrich the Undying, but he's missed a few signs with the person he's closest to most. Curly is no longer happy with the relationship. She also really wants all of Ulrich's money, so she reaches into her bag and pulls out a comb. This scene's so funny.
I'll go on vacation. And you can stay here! Stay here! Stay here!
She stabs Ulrich and takes his cash, leaving him with no money and only one spare life left. I also love how she slips out the door as she's running. Fun. This episode is so fun, I'm telling you. But it's not fun for Ulrich.
She killed me and took the money that I died for.
So now Ulrich only has one show left to try and make all his money back. He blackmails Barker so that all of the profits go to him, despite the carnival likely suffering due to this lack of income.
I don't know how you can live with yourself.
I don't.
And now we're all caught up. We see Ulrich get buried in a huge cavernous pit. I love how this looks. And then Ulrich talks to us again. He laughs to himself and thinks on all of the money that he'll walk away with once he comes back to life. And then he reminisces a little bit about where he came from and even the cat who gave him all of his lives.
Too bad he had to die. Wait a minute.
Ulrich realizes that he's been counting wrong this whole time. He thought he had the cat's 9 lives, but to give up the gland, the cat had to die. I hate talking about dead cats. So Ulrich actually only inherited 8, and he's used all of them up. This is his final life, and once he's dead, that'll be for good. He tries to get help, but no one can hear him from beneath the ground. And with the realization that he's about to suffocate and die, all he can do is beg and cry until his inevitable final death. And, that's where the episode ends.
Hope you enjoyed our little bedtime story, kids.
I did enjoy this one, Crypt Keeper. I enjoyed it a lot. Except all the cat deaths. I really hated that. The duality of Tales from the Crypt, am I right? I'd say this episode is really, really great. I'd give it a 9 out of 10, which is also how many lives those poor cats had. No more dead cats. So, let's talk about Ulrich the Undying. We can't really judge his beginnings too harshly. All we see is that he's down on his luck, homeless, and loving the booze. As far as we know, he's completely innocent here. But we do see his quick spiral into an evil nature. As soon as money comes rolling in, he gets dollar signs for eyes. That being said, he doesn't do a lot of bad. Except for, killing the doctor. That's really bad, but other than that, the worst thing that we see him do is blackmail Barker at the end. He's not a good dude, but he's really just focusing on him and only him. He doesn't care about other people, but he also doesn't go out of his way to mistreat anyone or scam them or anything like that. So really all we've got him on is that one murder, which puts him on par in my mind with Elizabeth from the last episode. So I think we should give him a sin score of 5 out of 10. His deadly sin is also super easy to figure out. It's all about the money. This man is the representation of greed through and through. And for his greed, honestly, he hardly suffers, in my eyes at least. The only retribution we see him get is right at the end, and all he earns is his own death. Suffocating seems like a bad way to go. The worst part has to be the knowledge of that death, which is definitely torturous, but at the same time, Ulrich has gone through worse deaths that we've already seen in the episode. So, is this one even that bad? I really don't think it is. I think it's pretty even with Talbot's fate of facing the electric chair. So, I think we'll toss Ulrich into the third layer of hell right next to the man who was death. And while Talbot is sobbing over his misfitting sockets, Ulrich's torture is that he'll constantly see $100 bill on the ground in front of him, but whenever he tries to pick it up, it slips away. Suffering. He's suffering. The next episode is called Only Sin Deep, a play on the phrase about beauty and how it's only skin deep. And speaking of beauty, let's see how the Crypt Keeper is doing.
Who's the fiercest of them all? Looks like I just bought 7 years bad luck.
So we've got a little theme going on here already, but if you haven't picked up on it yet, then I'm sure you will when you hear the main character's name. Ready? For this one, we'll follow a lady of the night named Sylvia Vane. She says it's Vane like weather vane, but I've got a feeling it goes a little bit deeper than that. Right at the start, we see her checking herself out in a mirror and admiring her own beauty.
This face is my meal ticket, honey.
She's got a friend and a fellow night worker named Raven who has a manager that she's been working with to earn more and keep her protected. I'll talk about him in just a second, but just know that he's looking for more employees and is very interested in Sylvia. But all Sylvia is interested in is a different life, a life of luxury and limos, and she has her eyes for a man that owns a big fancy apartment right across the street from where she regularly works.
Well, if it isn't Mr. GQ. I tell you, for the rich, every night's a party night.
Obviously, this man is incredibly rich, and that point is driven home with his name as well, because his name is Ronnie Price. I love it. It's just as on the nose as it could possibly be. Anyway, Sylvia knows that in order to even approach Ronnie, she'll need a whole new look, and that means she'll need a whole lot of money. And she has an idea of where to get some. She goes to Raven's manager and pulls him into a back alley for some smooching time. But while they discuss business, Sylvia just decides to rob him instead. She pulls out a pistol and takes all his jewelry, but this turns into a struggle, and while wrestling, her gun goes off and she ends up killing the manager and leaving him in an alley.
Like I said, strictly business.
The next day, she heads to a pawn shop to sell off her stolen goods. While in there, a really angry customer comes in and smashes a few things before storming back out. Also, this pawnbroker has a cop friend that comes in regularly. He's mostly just used for exposition, so just keep in mind that he will be coming around from time to time. The pawnbroker ends up refusing to buy any of Sylvia's jewelry because he's pretty positive that it's stolen, and the crime is way too hot right now for him to take the risk. But before Sylvia leaves, the pawnbroker stops her and says that they maybe could do some other kind of business, because he doesn't just pawn in physical goods. He's also interested in things that are a little less tangible.
Talking about your beauty.
My beauty, silly me, what was I thinking?
He offers her $10,000 in exchange for her beauty. Since it's a pawn shop, she'll have 4 months to redeem her beauty back if she wants it, but I'm sure that won't be coming into play at any time in the future. The broker makes a mold of Sylvia's beauty and pays her, and when she leaves, we see him enter a back room where he starts to talk to the rotten corpse of his dead wife.
Pretty soon, you'll be back with me. You'll look just like you did before. Like the day we were married.
he also does some strange spells, so yeah, he's up to something. Meanwhile, Sylvia is living it up. She goes on a huge shopping spree and remakes her image. Her beauty hasn't changed in any way, so she gets all dressed up, hires a limo, and decides it's time to get her man. The music here is so funny. It's just got a jaguar roar that pops up every once in a while. Like, Sylvia really is just like a cat on the prowl right now, hunting down her prey. Yeah. Maybe I'm reading it a little bit too much into the jaguar growls. Regardless, the hunt goes extremely well. She pretty much instantly gets Ronnie's attention, and he immediately ditches his date for her. She plays a little hard to get for like 2 seconds before she drags Ronnie into an elevator, and they just head home together.
You knew the second I walked in the room, the second I walked through that door, that I'm the girl of your dreams, right?
And apparently, things went incredibly well, because we then suddenly cut to 4 months later, and we see that Ronnie and Sylvia are happy as can be. Ronnie buys her all sorts of jewelry and, well, pretty much anything she could possibly ask for, and he drops a few hints that the relationship is going so well that a proposal is in the near future. But also at this time, Sylvia begins to notice her skin isn't looking as vibrant as it usually does, and she thinks she sees wrinkles or bumps appearing on her face.
You're a knockout, for Christ's sakes. What do you need all this junk for?
I don't know, I got an acne flare-up or something. I feel like I'm in high school.
Ronnie has to go on a business trip for a while, so we see a few days later, Sylvia ended up going to the doctors to have her skin checked out. And we also see that her condition is definitely real, and it's gotten way worse.
Look, all I want is a simple answer to a simple question. What is happening to my face?
The doctor tries to help her think on her recent history for things that could have poisoned her, and this causes Sylvia to remember the pawnbroker and the beauty that she sold. She heads there right away and demands to buy her beauty back.
I told you the time limit was 4 months. 4 months from this date is the 4th. Today's the 5th.
But we know that Sylvia is a master in negotiation. And by that, I mean she has a gun. And she threatens the broker to sell her back the beauty or she'll blast him away. He agrees to sell for $100,000, and Sylvia is forced to leave and try to find the money. And she's also scared away by the cop friend showing up with a little bit of coffee for the broker. She goes back to the apartment and gathers all her jewelry and any hidden cash that she can find. For some reason, and I genuinely have no idea why, she also begins to break everything and just ransack the place. And that was a terrible choice, especially now, at this very moment, because Ronnie comes home. He sees a strange woman tearing his house apart and thinks that she must be a burglar. He grabs the phone and calls the cops, but Sylvia's pretty mad that he no longer recognizes her, so she freaking shoots him.
Who are you?
Don't you recognize me, lover? I'm the girl of your dreams.
She also drops her gun and leaves it at the murder scene. She's just rolling nat ones tonight. She heads back to the pawn shop, but it's all closed and locked up, so she grabs a garbage can and is somehow able to break the door open. This shouldn't work, like at all, but it does. Sylvia walks in through the back and sees the pawnbroker's wife, only now she's pretty.
That's the way she used to look. She used to be so beautiful. Now I need other women's beauty just to keep her that way.
I thought the broker would be trying to bring his wife back to life, but I guess not. He really just wants her pretty. Dead and pretty. That's his type. And now comes a really fun dilemma. Sylvia gives the broker all of the money in exchange for her beauty. It comes in the form of this porcelain mask that she'll have to wear in order to get her beauty back. But is that a good choice? The broker pulls out the morning paper and shows Sylvia a picture of her on the front page with the news that she killed Ronnie. They've got her fingerprints and know she's guilty. And when the cop friend comes by a few minutes later, he also mentions that for a crime like this with a gun that's pinned on multiple murders now, it would be likely that Sylvia would land in the electric chair. So Sylvia has to choose beauty or life. As she is, she's unrecognizable and could live the rest of her days without even needing to hide. But on the other hand, UGLY, she ain't got no alibi. She ugly. She decides to take her beauty with her, but not put it on. She leaves the pawn shop and wants to leave the city before she ends up getting pretty again. But she's bumped by none other than Raven, and her beauty falls and shatters on the pavement.
Why don't you watch where you're going? You old, ugly, trifling.
As Sylvia gathers her broken beauty, we pan away and leave her desperate and ugly as the episode ends. And of course, the Crypt Keeper's gotta give us a few final words.
Just goes to show you, if you want to sell yourself, take a look in the mirror first. Well, see you next time, boys and girls.
This episode was pretty good, but it was a tiny step down from the other episodes that we've seen so far. It's still fun and has a pretty decent story, but it just wasn't quite on the level of interesting and weird that we've seen in the other episodes so far. I'd say it's a solid 6 out of 10. I do think Sylvia is pretty evil, though. Her vanity is rampant and blinds her from the consequences of her actions. Like killing that manager, it was straight up murder. She probably could have rationalized it in her own mind and said that it was a little bit okay because he was not a good dude. But there's just no excuse for her killing Ronnie. That decision was so dumb. Like, even in her irrational state, I feel like she should have been able to just think through shooting the man that she loved. But nope, she's dumb and now she's ugly too. Other than the murders, we do see her vanity cause her to treat others very poorly, so we'll count that a little bit towards the sin score, which I'm thinking is going to be a score of 6 out of 10. If vanity was a deadly sin, then Sylvia would be a shoo-in for that one, but it's not. There are a few that could fit her situation. She has a lot of pride in her looks, and she's clearly run by greed, with her want for money and luxury. But I think that the deadly sin that fits her the best is envy. She sees what others have, and she wants it. She sees Ronnie with his girlfriend in the beginning, and she can't stop thinking about what the woman has that she doesn't. And this mentality drives every decision that she makes right up until her beauty is gone, and she's forced to deal with her actions. So, without a doubt, I'm saying that envy is the deadly sin. And for her envy, well, she got ugly. And that's it. It's the lightest bit of retribution we've seen so far. She lives, she's free, she can still do pretty much anything she wants. She's just got a face that makes you go, ew. Honestly, this is as light of a fate as I could imagine from this series, so I'm gonna say that Sylvia is chillin' in the very first layer of hell, having it as easy as possible by just remaining ugly, no matter what she tries to do. It's still hell, but it's the least hell that she could have earned, so I think she should count her blessings. For this next episode, let me just quote Princess Bride to set the stage. Marriage is what brings us together today. Dino, cut that. That can't be in the video. Dino, cut. This episode is called Lover Come Hack to Me.
We're going to take a little ride to honeymoon hell.
There is a lot that happens in this episode, and it all starts with the newlyweds, Charles and Peggy. We also meet Peggy's aunt Edith. She's a very minor character, but she might come up a little bit later, so I figured I should mention her now. In the story, it makes clear to us that Charles does not love his new bride, and he's only marrying her for her money. I wonder what his deadly sin's gonna end up being. Despite the obvious lack of love, Peggy is insistent on making the marriage work, and she wants this night to be absolutely perfect. Peggy is also a little bit strange. She seems socially awkward and constantly anxious. From what we pick up, she's never been with a man or been in love before. So with Charles, she thinks that she's finally finding that perfection that she's always wanted, and she's choosing to blatantly ignore the signs that he just doesn't feel the same affection towards her. Unfortunately, this perfect night gets off to a really rocky start. It's storming out and a tree has fallen on the road and blocked their path. Charles wants to grab a flashlight, but in the glove box, they find a gun. One that both Charles and Peggy insists they don't recognize. Yet, Charles is pretty comfortable with it, and he decides to tuck it into his belt, just in case. Then, he heads out to move the tree, and makes absolutely no progress. But he does spot a mansion just beside the road, so they decide to try their luck and spend their wedding night inside of this decrepit old building. There are a few coincidental things that happen as well here. The tree could be considered one of them, so could the gun, but the really big ones are the fact that the car keys all of a sudden go missing from the ignition. Then, before they break a window to get into the mansion, a key just happens to fall out of a flower pot and it fits the doors locked perfectly, so they won't have to break anything. The inside of the house is falling apart and shows that the place is clearly abandoned, and yet there is a fireplace that seems to be set just for them. And upstairs, they find a perfectly made bed with dozens of candles scattered romantically around the room. They both acknowledge that, yeah, these things are weird, but other than saying it's weird, they have no idea what to do about it. Oh, there's also a very real-looking battle axe hanging above the fireplace. I just gotta mention that for no particular reason at all. If you haven't noticed, I've said the word perfect a few times now, and I'll probably be saying it more because perfection is Peggy's obsession. She's a bit of a strange person, but she constantly brings up her idea of the perfect marriage, the perfect honeymoon, the perfect love. She talks about her parents and clearly idolizes what they had, as her mother always talked about the perfect love that they had, despite them both dying at a very young age. So despite any oddities with the situation or any red flags with her new husband, Peggy is insistent that tonight must be perfect. So they light up the prepared fire and decide it's time to finally consummate their relationship.
Take off your wet clothes so they have a chance to dry. It's about time we saw each other naked, don't you think?
And we get to see Charles's butt. Well, I did, and Dino did. But you guys don't get to see it. There's just a blur here, but Charles's butt's behind this blur. Peggy's anxiety causes her to question a few things. Plus, like I said, she's never been with anyone, so she's very coy and unsure of what to do, and she starts to question the relationship, finally.
You're not really attracted to me, are you?
What are you talking about?
Charles insists that he is. We know he really just loves her money, but he keeps playing with her and promises all of the perfection that she could possibly desire.
You don't know how important it is for me to have this night be perfect.
Once they're ready, they head up to the bedroom with the made bed and candles that happen to be there, and Charles hops into the bed while Peggy puts on something special. Charles also puts the pistol from earlier on the bedside table and mumbles about how the marriage will be perfect because his wife has the perfect fortune. Love, am I right? But he's pretty surprised when Peggy comes out of the room.
I want this to be as perfect for you as it is for me.
There are a few scenes with some quite heavy romantic moments, and it's really strange because as they both release, their throes of passion turn into just screams. Peggy also says this afterwards, which is a little bit important for later on.
We made a child. I know we did. And she's only this big.
When they're too tired to continue, they each fall asleep. But Charles wakes up not too long later, alone. And he hears and then sees as two people pull up to the house and enter in a strangely similar scene to how he and Peggy arrived here earlier. And to make things worse, Charles is shocked to see that it's Peggy who enters with the strange man. We hear that apparently it's this couple's wedding night as well, and Peggy pulls her new husband into a passionate kiss, then rips off his shirt to give him the classic Donkey Kong look. This whole time, Charles is just mumbling to himself about how Peggy has betrayed him, but he's constantly also rationalizing his situation because all he really cares about is their marriage certificate and the right to her money that now grants him. But then things take a strange turn. Once they're finished, Peggy says something that we've heard before.
We made a baby girl, and she's only this big.
She then stands and grabs the battle axe from above the mantle. She raises it over the now sleeping man and then chops down again and again. Charles tries to stop her, but finds that as he gets near Peggy, he just phases through her and realizes that she must be a ghost. Or that this must be a nightmare. Also, it's really funny how Charles is like jumping around here and trying to grab the ghost Peggy, but then she's just mechanically just chopping down. It's such funny editing. Oh, one last thing. Before Charles wakes up, he hears this Peggy call the dead man Alan, which was Peggy's father's name. And then he realizes that this probably isn't Peggy and it must be her mother.
Don't you think Peggy would be a nice name for our little girl?
Oh! Please! Please! Please, God! Please, God! Please, let me be dreaming!
And then he wakes up screaming from the nightmare. Now awake, Peggy comforts Charles and tells him that everything will be okay. He explains his dream to her and tells her that he thought he saw her mother kill her father. And that's weird, right? Right, Peggy?
That's weird. That's exactly what happened on the night I was conceived.
What?
Peggy then steps into the bathroom and comes out with the battle axe that her mother used to kill her father, a tradition which she clearly intends to continue. So all of these clues that we saw, all of the happenstances, all of her obsessions with perfection, they were all telling us that Peggy was trying to have that same perfect love that her mother told her about while she was growing up. It was a love that couldn't be spoiled by time because it only lasted until their passion was at its peak. Just like tonight with Peggy and Charles. Their love couldn't possibly get any more powerful than at this moment, so Peggy knows it must end. It's also pretty funny because we learn that this whole time, Charles was also planning to kill Peggy at the end of this night. The gun from the glove box is his, and he was going to shoot Peggy and blame it on a burglar so that he would just inherit all of her money.
You love me too much to kill me.
You want to bet?
Peggy thought ahead and unloaded the bullets from the gun, so as Charles tries to reach for one, she just chops down and reenacts the perfect honeymoon that her parents had on the night that she was conceived. This episode then ends with a small conversation between Peggy and Aunt Edith, and we learn that Edith totally knew what was going to happen, and apparently it's been going on in their family for generations. And then the Crypt Keepers got a little bit of advice for us to, help us all stay alive.
All you bouncing bachelors out there, a word of warning. Before you take that matrimonial plunge, check out the bride's background.
Before going on to the review part of this episode, the last thing I want to mention is that it was directed by freaking Spider-Man. Yeah, that's right. Tom Holland wrote and directed this episode 7 years before he was born. What a talent. Alright, so it's a different Tom Holland, but he's actually still a huge deal. You might not recognize the name other than from Spider-Man, but I guarantee you know his movies. He wrote and directed Fright Night and Child's Play, and like a ton of other stuff, but it's just always cool for me to see his name pop up. Like, Fright Night is one of my favorite movies of all time, so I'm a big fan of Tom Holland. However, I wasn't a huge fan of this episode. It's a cool story, but it was told in a way that it just felt a little bit too convoluted. There were a few too many moving parts for how limited their time was on this episode, and I think if they had another 15 minutes to flesh out Charles's character and then help build the background of the parents just a little bit, then this story, it would have been a home run. But as is, I think it's the weakest episode of the season so far, so I'm only going to give it a 5 out of 10. As for Charles, I actually think he's the most innocent character that we've had so far. He didn't even kill anyone, so he's the first main character in the series without a kill count. For his sins, all we've got him on is money grubbing and then a plan to murder. He would have if given the chance, but he never did. So I'm thinking we'll just give him a super light 1 out of 10 for his sinner score, because he didn't do anything. Obviously, his deadly sin is going to be greed. He's all about the cash and he doesn't care about a bit of heartbreak to get it. But for his greed, he earned the same fate that we've seen some much more evil characters get. He died in a pretty brutal manner. I'd say it's the worst death that we've seen so far. It's not instant, and you know he felt pain and fear before his demise. So even though he's gotten the lowest sin score possible, I think his fate was worse than the actual murderers that we've seen in the series. I'm gonna say he's suffering in the 4th circle of hell, where we'll torture him by forcing him to chop down trees in an endless forest, using only the clearly fake and not sharp at all battle axe that was in this episode. Hey, it could have been worse, you know. I could have said he had to chop it down with a herring, but not even I'm that cruel. The final episode of the season is called Collection Complete. And other than seeing the Crypt Keeper's pet dog Peeves, who's looking great by the way, we just hop right into the night's terrifying tale. Although I do have to mention that the screenplay was done by a pair of brothers, one named Randolph and the other named Battle. Dude, can you imagine being Randolph when your brother was given the name of not just a warrior, but an entire part of a war? Like, I had to do like a triple take when I read their names on screen, so I just had to mention that this one was partially written by Battle. The episode opens with a woman named Anita who's preparing a retirement party for her husband. She's a woman after my own heart because instantly we see that she loves animals. More on that later, like a lot more on that later. But for now, we see her meet a new cute little kitty that she names Mew Mew. And then we meet her newly retired husband named Jonas. And if you can't tell by the expression on his face, he's a little bit of an angry fellow. And he really hates animals.
You can throw away that new cat while you're about it too.
Jonas only has one volume and pretty much only has one emotion, you know, anger. Even when he's going to bed, he sort of yells about it.
Too tired. Too tired.
We learn that Jonas's retirement was mandatory, and all his job rewarded him with is this shiny hammer. And now with his required retired life, he's learning that he knows almost nothing about his wife. They're practically strangers, so we see them constantly tripping over each other, and just see in general that when they're together, they have nothing to do, and they both just get bored. But what's even worse for Jonas is how Anita constantly treats him like he's one of her animals. Oh, speaking of her animals, she's got a ton. We see multiple cats and dogs, we see birds, we see the parrot that bit off Zeke the plumber's nose, fish, really big fish, and even some snakes, spiders, and squirrels that we see a little bit later. And like I mentioned, she's picked up the habit of treating Jonas like he is an animal. She says he barks when he's mad, and we see him doing just that when he tries to scare a bird away from outside the window. She also pets him to calm him down, and she feeds him his medication hidden in treats. And then at one point she even ends up feeding him tuna from a can of cat food. So things are a little bit rocky to say the least. And just to make it a little worse, we meet a bulldog that Anita has named Jonas because he reminded her so much of her husband. It's meant to be a compliment.
Hey, beat it, you mangy mutt!
Jonas vents to his friend and neighbor Roy about the situation, and Roy isn't surprised about Anita's love for animals at all. But he's also picked up that Jonas hasn't even talked to her about any of the issues that they've been having. So he gives 2 pieces of advice. One, that Jonas needs to find a hobby, one that would allow him and Anita to have a common interest if possible. And 2, to actually talk with Anita so that they can come to some kind of solution. It's sound advice, but when Jonas goes to speak to his wife, he sees her sitting at the table having a full-blown conversation with Mew Mew. So he knows she's a completely lost cause. And then there's the boiling point for Jonas as he gets frustrated while gardening and tries to kill Mew Mew with some shears. He fails and falls into their pond. But when he goes inside to shower, he finds that Anita has moved all of her fish into the tub to clean their tanks. And he really doesn't love this situation. Did I say boiling point? I meant that this was the moment that Jonas totally rationally figures out a new hobby.
Honey, it finally occurred to me. The perfect hobby. A hobby I know I'll just love.
Oh, Jonas!
What is this hobby, you ask? Well, we're not sure. And we cut to a few weeks later to see that Anita isn't really sure what the hobby is either. But she knows that Jonas has become happier because of it. She's also noticed that her animals are starting to go missing. But sometimes they just come and go, so I'm sure that everything's just fine. Then, one day, dog Jonas goes missing, and Anita goes to search for him.
What are you doing here? Get the hell out of here! I didn't tell you could come down here.
Well, I can't find Jonas either. He never stays away this long.
Jonas tells her that he saw dog Jonas out in the yard just a moment ago, and when Anita goes up to find the pup, well, Jonas is a bit different now.
Jonas, where have you been? Mommy's been worried about you.
And other Jonas is also quite different, and like the freaking worst person in the world now, as he laughs and revels in what he's been doing in the basement.
He's a prize in my collection. Part of my new hobby, taxidermy.
All the animals are gone, but he laughs and says that Mew Mew, Anita's favorite cat, is still alive in a box in the basement and just waiting to complete his collection.
What have you done to my babies?
Anita sees all her stuffed pets, and she doesn't take it well. She tries to get Mew Mew out of there, but Jonas's hobby is now his obsession, and he refuses to hand over the cat. So, in desperation, Anita grabs the retirement hammer and doesn't even think on her actions.
Nina, no!
We cut to the next day and see Anita and Jonas enjoying a little bit of TV. But the peaceful situation isn't quite as it seems. Roy comes over for a hangout and shows us the now stuffed body of Jonas. And with that, and a few commands from the Crypt Keeper, the episode ends.
Until next time, I want all of you to sit, stay, play dead. Good boy.
I absolutely love this episode, but I also completely hate this episode. Killing animals, man. I hate killing animals, but this is such a cool story, and it's so twisted, and everyone in it is crazy. I'd say it's a solid 7 out of 10. Now, I think this probably says more about me than anything else, but I felt so much worse about all these animals' deaths than I did with any of the people's deaths that we've seen in the series. I don't think I can say that killing an animal is more evil than killing a human. My rational brain won't let me say that. But my irrational brain friggin' loves animals and immediately wanted to convict Jonas to a 10 out of 10 sin score. But I can't. I can't do it. He's super evil for killing animals, but that's really all we see him do. He doesn't hurt or kill any person. He doesn't steal stuff. He doesn't lie or cheat. He taxidermies his wife's most precious babies. Yeah, that's messed up. And I'm gonna say that killing a bunch of animals is definitely as evil as killing a human. So let's say that he's a 5 out of 10 with the sin score, right on par with Ulrich the Undying and Elizabeth the Santa Slain. His deadly sin is one that we haven't seen before, but it was also pretty easy to nail down. He comes in screaming and he keeps it up while getting frustrated and angry and eventually becoming wrathful. So his deadly sin is, without a doubt, wrath. And for his wrath, he was killed by his wife and stuffed. I think that this death and this fate is pretty bad. We can be sure that he was dead before the stuffing and stitching happened, but who knows how long his death lasted while Anita was prepping him for the taxidermy process. I don't think he went down quickly at all, and his rotting body being placed for all to see is pretty rough. I'll say he's suffering at layer 6, where he'll be hunted and devoured over and over by the very animals he stuffed, only to wake up the next day and relive it. I hate this guy, and I'm glad he'll be suffering. and he'll be suffering for a long time, because this is the end of the first season. I'm so excited to be talking about a new series, and it's been really fun delving into the evils that we see in each of these episodes. My favorite thing about horror stories is how varied they can be. The horror genre covers anything from scary to weird to just plain confusing, and with Tales from the Crypt, you can feel the creative liberties that this genre allows. I mean, we got stories of an electrifying mass murderer, a Santa slasher, a ritual that takes away beauty, all in the same series, and told by a cackling little ghoul. It's wonderful, and I can't wait to see where the series goes with the next 6 seasons. I haven't seen most of this series, so a lot of it has already been new, and I mean, just plain awesome to experience. So now, let's talk about the stats for season 1. I think the weakest episode in the season was Lover Come Hack to Me. It was a cool story and had a lot of potential, but in the end it left me wanting a little bit more and didn't quite satisfy the mystery that they set up. So this episode only earned a 5 out of 10. While on the other hand, man, episode 2 and All Through the House scored that perfect 10 out of 10. It's seriously one of the best episodes of TV that I've seen in a long time. If you haven't seen this one, or if it's been a while, then you should definitely give it a watch the next time you're in the mood for a slasher. We saw a lot of evil people in these 6 episodes, but I think there's no question that Charles from Lover Come Hack to Me was the most innocent of any of the characters that we saw. He was planning a murder, but never got around to it, and otherwise, he was really just money grubbing, but fine, and he only got a sin score of 1 out of 10. And there's no doubt on the most evil for me as well this season. It's gotta be Niles Talbot from The Man Who Was Death. He killed multiple people via electric shock, which probably isn't the fastest way to go if not done precisely, and by the end of his run, it was clear that his lines of justice were blurry at best. For his multiple shocking homicides, he earned a sin score of 7 out of 10. So, using the sin scores and the character endings, we can see that Sylvia Vane from Only Sin Deep, the ugly character, had the least amount of suffering possible. She ended up in the first layer of hell, getting a slight sunburn all over her wrinkled complexion. A super kind fate for a sin score of 6 out of 10. And the person who ended up suffering the worst fate in season 1 is without a doubt Elizabeth from And All Through the House. She killed one person, her husband, which puts her sin score on par with 2 others in the season. But she made it out far worse than any of the others. In the end, she died, but before her death, she was traumatized by the psycho Santa, and in her final moments, she was forced to watch the madman take her daughter away, leaving her fate a complete unknown, which I think is pure torture. An inability to protect your child, helplessness as you watch your tormentor take her from your sight, it's a fate worse than death, and it earned Elizabeth a place in the 7th layer of hell. And it earns her the title of the character who suffers the worst fate in Tales from the Crypt. So far. That's definitely a crown you don't want to wear. These videos are a lot of work to make, so if you enjoyed, then please leave a like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future uploads. There are a lot of seasons of the show and a few movies, and I will be covering it all. Season 2 is like 18 episodes, by the way, so I think I'm gonna be cutting that one into parts so that it doesn't take me like 4 months to make. So, more to come soon. If you're looking for a good way to support the channel, then consider leaving a hype. It's kind of like an upvoting system that YouTube's trying to help out smaller channels. Or take a look at our merch and consider becoming a channel member. It's only a few bucks a month and it will get you early access on these videos, as well as some behind the scenes content, and your name read out at the end of these videos, just like all of these lovely boils and ghouls. J.R. Cillian Green, Dane Andre, Brian Wiggs, Kevin Solo, Nelson Rat, Vernetti, Bollywood Shank, Hugh Roden, Channel 27, Puke 97, Mr. Blasto, Author Alex, Jessica Martinez, Chris Ovak, Paul A, Sarah, JT, Jordan King, Danielle Green, Aaron Ritchie, Joseph Caldwell, Kicked Joe Ass, K, Rory Bonklife, Nicole, Zerbleen, April Farmentino, I was like, Emilio, Stu the Human, Bogmeyer Sandman, Queeby, Kurakula, Zed Sizigi, Reaver Approach, Shelly March, and Igor DaCosta. And with that said, let's close the chapter on this season of Tales from the Crypt. Until next time.
Well, see you next time, boys and ghouls.
Try it.
What was in there?